"What were you looking for, dear?" Andrea asked calmly, as if having a box of condoms in her bag was something normal. I couldn't formulate words at that moment and muttered something incomprehensible. "Your key, I need to move your car. Why do you have a box of condoms in your purse?" "Because." This was said as indifferently as if my question were somehow ridiculous. Why? Why are there condoms in your purse?" I began to regain my ability to think and speak. There was a long, tense pause before she answered. She frowned slightly, took a deep breath, and said, "Well, you don't want me to have sex without them, right?" It was like being hit by a truck. I staggered back and sat down on one of the chairs at the kitchen table. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to think. The air was knocked out of my lungs, and I couldn't breathe. Andrea continued, "I always use protection with him. I'm pretty sure it's very clean, but I'm also sure you don't want me bringing home any unwanted germs." Andrea said it as if it was the most natural thing in the world, as if I was ridiculous for wondering why my wife had a box of condoms in her purse. I was a fool. Before I go any further, I should probably tell you a little about myself, Andre, and the Stewart family. My name is John L. Stewart. I am 33 years old. I am married to Andrea Stewart, and she's my age. We met at the university and got married right after graduating from school. I am a mechanical engineer and Andrea is a real estate agent. We have three beautiful daughters. I've talked about them before, and we live in a very upscale neighborhood in Albany, New York. The home is a two-story colonial with a three-car garage, a wraparound driveway, and a pool in the backyard. The house has 5 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms. It's honestly too big a house for us, but Andrea found it, and it was a bargain at the time, so we bought it. We've been living there for about 3 years now and have gotten to know the neighbors and people living next to us. The schools in the area are very good, and we both have an easy commute to work. Overall, I would say that life was almost perfect. Almost. If it were perfect, I wouldn't have to work 60 hours a week, and Andrea wouldn't have to work all hours of the day or night, including weekends. We try to take care of the kids first and have dinner together at least 3 times a week. Sundays are always a time when we spend time together, do something in common, and then sit down for dinner, talk, laugh, and discuss what each of us did last week and what we are planning for next week. The dining table, for me, is one of the hearts of the house. My mom and dad taught me this. We gathered there to eat, talk business, tell stories and laugh, solve problems, and make plans for the future. That's why when Andrea and I decided to talk, it was in the kitchen. We eventually sat down at the table. "This has nothing to do with you, John. This only applies to me. It's just what I need, and it's separate from us and our family." Well, you would think that the woman speaking these words was a complete stranger compared to the woman I was married to for 11 years. The woman with whom I shared a family, a house, a bed. She continued, "Don't dwell on it, John. In fact, you can forget about it because it won't affect you at all. Our life has not changed. Our family has not changed. It hasn't affected you in any way so far, and believe me, dear, it won't affect you in the future." I took a deep breath because I realized I wasn't breathing. "Is it true? Are you serious? Should I just forget about it? My wife is having sex with another man, and I should just forget about it. My God." I exhaled. Breathing is so hard to remember. "And you just told me you've been sleeping with Rob for 2 years. What the hell, Andrea?" She looked at me with an expression that said I was being ridiculous. "Honey, you've been very busy with your work, and so have I, and the kids are at that age where their lives require a lot of our time, and it's just a small thing, which relieves stress for me." She paused to let this wise comment sink in. "If you think about it rationally, our sex life is significantly reduced from what it was, but at this point in our lives, there is nothing we can do about it. I mean, unless we can somehow add hours to the day or stop time so we can have sex like we used to." She paused again for effect. "So what I do doesn't really matter to us. It's selfish of me, yes, I admit it, but I get my needs met and come home to you and our daughters, being a good wife and mother. My mouth was open as I listened to this. Nonsense. Wait, are you equating cheating with being a better wife and mother? I tilted my head slightly to hear her better. I couldn't believe I was hearing this from the woman I'd been married to for 11 years. Suddenly, the room began to spin, like a fair that had gotten out of control. I fell out of my chair onto the floor, catching myself with one hand, and then the contents of my stomach were unceremoniously released. A moment later, I was on my feet and making my way to the master bedroom bathroom as quickly as possible to finish the job. I was on my knees with dry cramps and my face pressed against the toilet, trying to regain my composure when Andrea peeked around the corner. "I'm so sorry, honey. I never intended for you to find out this way. I thought it was best that you didn't know. What would be the point of that?" She watched me throw up again. Then she took a towel, wet it with cold water, and handed it to me. I took it and wiped my face and mouth. Slowly, on very unsteady legs, I stood up. I could see the expression on her face. She really looked worried. That's what was inexplicable. That's what I couldn't understand. Who is this woman? What did she do to my wife? Where is the real Andrea? "Honey, I'll take the girls to school and see you after work. I'll make dinner, and then when the girls go to bed, we'll have a drink and talk, okay?" Sweat was dripping from my face, and I could not find words that would express, at least to some extent, what I wanted to say. I mean, Jesus Christ. I heard the doors slamming and her car starting, so I slowly got up from the bathroom floor, plopped down on the bed, and closed my eyes. I had to focus on not vomiting anymore. There was nothing left in my stomach except maybe the remnants of the broken pieces of my heart. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I remember calling my boss and saying that I was sick and couldn't come to the office. I had things that needed rescheduling, but nothing that couldn't wait a day or two. The house was quiet, which meant Andrea and the girls had left. I looked at my watch and realized that it was already past 10. I undressed and stood under the hot shower for an eternity, maybe half an hour, but my ability to tell time was somehow impaired. I put on jeans and a shirt and went back to the kitchen. My early efforts were taken away. The window was open and the smell almost disappeared. I sat down at the table and stared at him, hoping that he would give me some great revelation about what the hell happened that morning. I began to formulate questions, so many things I needed to know. But what I really wanted was to turn back time, to make the day better without finding a box of condoms in my wife's purse. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was better that I didn't know. But now I know. And she told me. My head started to spin again, and I went to lie down. After trying to lie down and regain my ability to think, I stood up and returned to the kitchen. Crime scene, whatever it is. I took a large glass of ice water and went to get a notepad and pen. I took 3 extra-strength Tylenol and drank some water as I began taking notes. I'm an engineer and we take notes on everything, at least the important things. I had a hard time concentrating on the damn piece of paper. I started taking notes, but it was meaningless nonsense. I tore out the page, crumpled it, and threw it into the corner. I started many points, but always came back to the central question: what the hell happened to my marriage? I stood up, put my notebook away, and decided I needed to go outside and get some fresh air. Maybe it would give me some clarity and insight on what to do. I walked for almost 2 hours until I felt weak. I realized that the little I had tried to eat for breakfast had gone too fast, and I had only had a glass of water since then. I stopped at a diner and was able to eat a bacon, tomato, and lettuce sandwich with a Diet Coke. I felt a little better with the food in my belly, and on the way home I had some thoughts about what I wanted to talk to Andrea about. I wanted to know why she replaced me as her lover, and what are her plans for the future. If she was going to leave me, I was very sure it would be without my daughters. I was very determined that they would not be victims here, and that I would fight for them with all my might. Just because their mother can't stop herself from having sex with men doesn't mean my children or I will suffer unnecessarily. I love my wife, at least I did. Now I'm not so sure. Where did it all go wrong? I, in my own mind, thought that obviously I was not a good enough husband for her. If there was, Then why would she seek love and sex with other men? Is she going to leave me? Is she planning to take my children? Was the box of condoms in her purse an accidental oversight on her part to keep her secret, or was it an opportunity to come clean and make her moves? Damn, this is driving me crazy. Andrea, I tried to get home a little early. I wanted to cook a nice dinner for us and spend some time after dinner with the girls and John, being a family together. John wasn't home when the girls and I arrived, but his car was there. I thought he might have gone for a run to process what we had talked about earlier that morning. I tried to joke about it a little and make a joke out of it, but John wasn't amused, and his reaction when I thought about it was completely normal. I mean, how do you react when your wife says she's having sex with another man? I could have handled it better, but John's discovery of condoms threw me off balance, hence my feeble attempt to make a joke out of it. I needed to get the situation under control before things got out of hand and we got into trouble. When John returned home, he was very quiet. He looked at me like a hawk circling its prey. He said very little to me other than muffled grunts and the occasional "aha" or "no." I put on one of my tightest pairs of jeans and a sleeveless blouse and wore my hair just the way John liked it. I even put on some perfume, which I know he really likes. I wanted to be attractive to him and let him know that what we were talking about was not threatening to him in any way. After dinner, the girls did homework, I cleaned up the kitchen, and then we went outside for some fresh air while shooting hoops in the driveway. John is always up for it, but today he stayed inside and didn't say a word when we went outside. I began to question my decision to indulge my fantasies outside of marriage. It was just once a week and during the day, and I always made sure we used condoms, and I was clean inside and out when I got home. I never let my Thursdays interfere with my family and John. There were many times when I canceled my Thursdays. Work, family, and personal reasons sometimes influenced what I did, but every time I made sure that my family came first. Thursday was to satisfy that itch that needed scratching. It was something that just happened. Rob and I met after I started working in a real estate agency. He is married and has a family around the same age as my children. I realized that John and I never had time just for us. We almost had to plan sex. That made it really exciting. I'm being sarcastic now. But I know that you think that I am a girl of easy virtue for cheating on my husband. Maybe you are right. Maybe not. John is a great husband and father. He works hard to provide for his family, and I know he does it with the understanding that if we had to live on his income alone, we could do it. So he considers my income a bonus, and we save most of it. Most of it went towards paying off the mortgage early and some on home renovations, but our savings and investment account are also healthy. The problem is that with demanding careers and 3 busy kids, we don't have time for ourselves. There is no time to enjoy each other and connect as a couple, as lovers. We used to be on top of each other every night. Nowadays, if we have sex once a week, it's good luck. I need more, and I know John wants more too. The sex with John is great. Why do you think we have 3 children, and we are only just over 30? My passion for Thursdays was something I wanted to satisfy my needs. I didn't want to make John feel bad by pestering him for sex that was quick and unsatisfying. Who wants this? I decided a long time ago that I wanted something that would give me what I wanted, but I had to make sure that it wouldn't affect my family in any way. They actually came first, but I decided there was a way for me to get what I wanted without jeopardizing my future. I've been right so far. But now, the challenge was to protect my family and give me the opportunity to continue doing what I do. This was the hard part, how to not make my husband feel threatened and allow me to continue having my Thursdays. The children had gone to bed, and now was a good time to talk. I took some wine out of the refrigerator and poured it for myself, and brought John his favorite beer. It was an IPA from a local craft brewery. My heart was beating quite fast, and I had to admit to myself that I didn't have much confidence that this conversation would go the way I wanted. There was a lot at stake. "Honey, sit down, we need to talk." John looked at me sideways and slowly sat up. I pushed a glass of beer towards him. I started, I have to tell you that you have nothing to worry about. I'm not doing anything that will affect you or the children. No matter what you think, you and they come first in my life." John looked at me as if I had two heads. I continued, "Really, dear, you have nothing to worry about. I am your wife. I love you very much." John then replied, "Yes, I believe you love me, but are you in love with me?" He was good. "Yes, dear, I'm very much in love with you. I have been in love since I met you, and my love for you grew every day and even more with every child we had. I'm so happy with our life. Our children are perfect, and you are perfect." His mouth opened slightly, and when he tried to speak, no words came out. He took a small sip to wet his throat. "So, what the hell are you doing having sex with another man?" I looked at my husband. "Well, it's a little hard to explain, but I have to try. I owe you this." I took a small sip and started. "It started out as a fantasy. We all have them. I know you do. We even talked about some of them when we had sex. And then it got bigger. This has become more so as we have become busy with our lives. Your work, my work, girls' life. We spent less and less time with each other. I wanted you so much it hurt, but I knew that this wouldn't happen. I had an itch that needed scratching, and you weren't always there to do it. You were busy with work, doing things with the girls. I was busy with work. My schedule is crazy. How many evenings and weekends did I have to work? And you had to work, and it was impossible for us to be together." I paused. I needed a small sip. So I came to the conclusion that I needed this. I know this may seem ridiculous, but this is what I need. I need the satisfaction that sex brings. He calms me down, makes me happy. Rob helps me scratch this itch that I need to scratch. We only meet once a week and limit ourselves to just an hour or two. It's enough to get me through days and a week. I can't get enough of you, so I'm replacing him with you." John stared into space at the table in front of him. I saw that he didn't know what to say or do. I continued, "Honey, what I want more than anything is for you to take me into the bedroom and fuck me crazy. It makes me feel like your wife, your woman." I emphasized yours. In a quiet voice I said, "But I need this for myself. Right now and a little longer until our lives change and we have more time for each other. So please be patient with me and know that I am yours. Fully. And I always will." I got up from the table, took John's hand, and led him into the bedroom. He walked silently. I undressed in front of him and then undressed him. You think I'm a cheating bitch, but that I claim to love my husband. Well, I guess I cheated, but I love my husband. But I need him to give it to me a little more. I need him to give me the space to get what I need so I can be an even better wife to him and a better mother to our children. My happiness was the key to making me this better wife and mother. My Thursday afternoon was something I intended to keep doing for a little while longer. After all, I know better. I know this is what I need now. John will understand. He will let me do it. He loves me enough to understand and allow me to do this. John. Crap. The conversation didn't go well. This whole damn mess started when I found an unopened box of condoms in my wife's purse. I was looking for her spare car key so I could move her car. Her purse was filled with all the crap that women carry in their bags. Finding a box of condoms there. Well, a million thoughts flashed through my head at once. While I was looking at the box of condoms, Andrea appeared in the kitchen, and she simply took the box from my hand and put it back in her purse. "Roy, I need your help." I continued to explain my situation in excruciating detail. Roy nodded his head, made noises at frequent intervals, and jotted down notes on his yellow legal pad. And when I finished, he said, "Well, John, what can I say? This is a rather unusual story. I mean, I'm a divorce lawyer, and I hear a lot of tragic stories, but this is definitely a new turn of events." For $300 an hour, that's all he has? I got to the point. "Jesus, Roy, what the hell can I do about this?" He replied, "What do you want to do with it?" And here it is. What the hell am I doing with my wife and her lover? Then he looked really serious for a moment before he continued, "Now, First of all, as your lawyer, my first advice is don't do something stupid. Don't get into fights or threaten anyone with physical harm. The New York court will look down on it, and you'll only end up in a jail cell. And we don't need that, right? No, of course we don't need that. Being in a prison cell won't solve any of my problems. I know that violence is not the solution to this. Violence may be the answer to some problems, but what did I really want? I mean, I have to do something about this. I can't just let this continue. So, Roy, what are my options? Well, there are a lot of things you can do, but I have to be honest with you. They all suck in a big way. I was amazed at such a frank confession coming from a highly experienced divorce lawyer who was in his 50s and wore a suit and vest. What are you talking about? Roy looked even more serious, if that was possible for a man who lived and breathed dirty divorce cases. He was supposedly the best in the field and wasn't cheap. But Roy was a realist. Considering I'm only 34 years old, have 3 daughters, and a career that's going well and has great prospects, now is not the time to screw things up. So Roy laid out my options. His short course on divorce was deeply depressing. There are essentially 7 different grounds for divorce in New York State. He continued listing them. 1. Cruel and inhumane treatment. 2. Remaining the plaintiff as a defendant for a period of 1 or more years. 3. Imprisonment of the defendant for a period of 3 or more consecutive years after marriage. 4. Voluntary commission of infidelity by the defendant with a person who is not the plaintiff after marriage. 5. Living separately under a separation order or decision for a period of 1 or more years after the entry of such order or decision. 6. Living separately in accordance with a written separation agreement signed by the parties for a period of 1 or more years after signing the agreement. And 7. Severance of relations between husband and wife, which lasts at least 6 months, provided that one of the parties declared this under oath. So what the hell should I do? Number 4, grounds for infidelity, seemed at first glance to be my best option for resolving my little problem. Let's put a pencil cross next to this item and look at the rest. Living separately for a year may be a solution. Let's put pencil crosses opposite points 5 and 6. Number 7 is often used in divorces in this state. Roy said he made a lot of money from it. Unless I do something stupid like beat up, rob, or run away from my wife and family to a Caribbean island, there doesn't seem to be an easy solution to my cheating wife problem. Number 7 is the no-fault ground, which is used when one party does not want to continue the marriage. But at first glance, it seemed that number 4 of the above grounds was my best candidate, at least for now. But not so fast, Roy thinks. My boy, the real devil in all this is that you have 3 daughters. I'm guessing you want to be a full-time father rather than a part-time father? I looked at Roy with a puzzled expression that said, "What do you really mean?" Well, of course, I want to be a full-fledged father. This is my main reason why I came to you. Roy nodded sagely again and let out an "uh-huh." My point is, John, that in a divorce now, all you'll really achieve is turning yourself into a part-time dad, living alone most of the time and without the financial resources you currently have, unless you start earning a lot more money than we have now. I sat there, stunned, as if I had been hit in the head by Mike Tyson. One of those sneaky blows that leaves you mindless and spinning, ready to fall. Unable to determine where is up, where is down, where is left or right. It's good that I was already sitting. After I took a sip of water and regained the ability to string more than 2 syllables together, I looked at my wise lawyer and asked, "Jesus, Roy, what the hell are you telling me?" My eyes were bulging, and I could feel the veins in my neck bulging. My blood pressure was approaching stroke levels. In his calm and very controlled voice, looking at me over his glasses, he summarized, "Well, John, I don't want to be too harsh, but I would be dishonest with you if I didn't tell you the truth." He paused and swallowed before continuing. "You're completely screwed, my boy." My mouth was open, and my jaw muscles suddenly couldn't function enough to close my mouth. As the words penetrated to the very core of my soul, I understood how those sentenced to death feel in the last hours before meeting the executioner. It was a grim realization that came over me, to think that a cheating wife would trick me. Well, the room seemed to be spinning on some unknown axis, and everything was blurry for several minutes. Time froze, or sped up, or stood still. I had no idea what it did. The next thing I knew, Roy was standing on one side of me and his secretary, Shirley, was standing on the other. She held a bottle of water, offering it to me. Water for a drowning person. Maybe I was in the desert, maybe on Mars. Maybe I'd see one of those expensive Mars rovers and catch a ride back to sanity. Maybe I would just drown. Maybe. Who the hell knows? I breathed into the paper bag, trying to regain my ability to breathe normally. I think I was out of breath, hyperventilating. I took the water bottle and drank it all in one big gulp, and returned the empty bottle to Shirley. When I had regained the ability to breathe somewhat normally again, along with the ability to think logically, I looked at Roy and reviewed the 7 reasons for divorce in New York. So why shouldn't I seriously consider number 4 on your sweet list, Roy? I mean, my wife has been enjoying another man for a while now. She even confessed to me in our kitchen, for God's sake. Why don't I speed up this show because of her cheating? It's all really her fault, not mine. Roy nodded wisely, his face expressing several things at once without the need to speak. But then he spoke. I wouldn't want Roy representing me in criminal court. I mean, how can you defend yourself if your lawyer shrugs and winces in front of the jury, expecting them to understand what it means? No, Roy was good at divorce cases, so I stuck to that with him as my representative. John, I don't want to seem too rude, but I have to be honest with you. In your situation, you will lose and lose much more than you will ever gain. You can deal with your wife's infidelity, but you will lose your children, your home, your financial future, and, most importantly, your happiness. The old bastard waited a little longer before continuing his lecture on loss. I know that this must seem extremely unfair to you, and frankly, it's very unfair. But the law guides divorces, and if your wife does not physically harm you or the children, the court will be inclined to give custody to the mother. He continued, I know what you're thinking. Treason must be taken into account by the court, but as a rule, it is not taken into account. Roy looked upset by this fact. It's as if he's personally offended by the state of divorce law in New York State. I'm sure many of his clients would like to see infidelity factored into child custody and home custody decisions. But that's not true. I decided to breathe again. Damn it. Having said this, I glanced around the room before settling on my lawyer. I was lost. So, let me think about this, Roy. Andrea continues to have sex with other men as she pleases, and there is really nothing I can do about it. That and the fact that if I divorce her, she'll be laughing on the way home, taking my kids and my house, and I'll probably have to pay to support her lifestyle. I wasn't sure if I was asking a question or summing it up so it was easy to understand. I knew in my little lizard brain that I was screwed, that I wasted 11 years of my life on a woman who probably laughs at me every day, at least every time she has sex with her lover, Rob. What if I just throw her out? I'm sure that if I admitted to having sex with other women, she would be furious and try to throw me out of the house. Why don't I try to do the same with her? Will the court not be lenient towards me in this case? Roy nodded wisely and replied, Well, John, you can certainly try it. I know this has been tried before, and overall, I have to say it has had a very low success rate. You see, your wife, Andrea, will tell the court that your forced eviction of her from the house denies her the right to be with the children. She will try to prove that her parental rights were unfairly violated without good cause, and thus she and her lawyer will ask the court to restore her custody of the children. Courts in New York State are firmly on the side of mothers. Of course, mothers are held to certain standards, and unless you have very convincing evidence that Andrea is unfit to be a mother, then I must tell you now that any attempt to deny her access to the home and children will most likely fail. Roy let those words sink in my head for a few minutes before continuing. I sat motionless. My brain was in a state of complete numbness. What the hell am I going to do? If I leave, I will lose my children, my home, and most of my income and future. Also that Andrea can freely have sex with any men in my house, even when my kids are home. Crap. The other problem is that I can't really get Andrea to leave the house. All she has to do is contact a lawyer to quickly get an order from a judge allowing her to return to the house. All of this will only make me the bad guy in the eyes of the court. Any judge, especially a female judge who is also a mother, will likely have a very negative view of my attempts to deny Andrea access to the children. No, that won't work at all. So what the hell should I do? I looked up and saw Roy's mouth moving, but I had no idea what he was saying. Finally, I heard, "John, John, John, do you understand what I'm telling you?" I shook my head. "Sorry, Roy, but I didn't hear what you just said." He looked at me with his stern but fatherly gaze, and, I believe, repeated, "My advice, John, is to go home and forget what your wife told you about her extramarital affair. If you can't just get it out of your head, then I suggest you see a marriage counselor and work out an agreement that best suits your needs. If a marriage counselor can't solve the problem, then perhaps I can help draw up a prenuptial agreement that you and Andrea can agree on that will allow you both to stay in the house and, most importantly, with your children. So here it is. Nothing to do. And if I can't handle doing nothing, then work out a written agreement that will allow my wife to continue having sex with other men. Because if I can't do one of these two things, then the alternative will not be in my favor, and especially not in my children's favor. Jesus. I returned to my office, closed the door, and sat alone, drowning in my sorrows with an ice-cold bottle of water. I pondered Roy's wise words and tried to imagine how I would live with this new situation. I continued to take huge breaths, holding my breath for a few seconds before exhaling. Andrea and I had to talk again. Not sure when we'll do it, but we have to. Perhaps more than once. First week. Life in our house was almost as normal as ever. The three girls were busy with school, sports, and other activities. I didn't have time to dwell on how my relationship with my mother had changed in the past week. My marriage has changed. He was not the same as he had been for the first 13 years. This was a new reality. I wasn't sure Andrea thought anything had changed for her now that her desires and intentions were out in the open. My three daughters, Laura, 6, Matilda, 8 years old, and Diana, 11 years old, knew nothing of the new dynamic between their mother and me. As far as they knew, life in the Stewart family remained unchanged, at least for now. Andrea acted as if nothing had changed and nothing was said between us. She greeted me at the door with a kiss on the lips and her usual warmth and care. She asked me about my day at work and shared what she did at her job. She took care of the children as usual. She sometimes cooked and did some household chores. Everything was amazingly normal. It was as if there was no admission that she had sex with another man once a week. When she returned home, she looked normal, smelled normal, and acted normal. Damn it. Maybe I made it all up. Am I just ignorant, John? Second week. On Thursday evening, Diana had soccer practice. Her team practices once a week, usually on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock, and then they have a game on Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock. This is a team for 10 and 11-year-olds. Laura and/or Matilda usually go to training with me, and the whole family goes to games. Immediately after the game, Matilda has ballet lessons. I'm used to Andrea not going to training. She had things to do at work, and I didn't attach any importance to it. But this Thursday was different. This was the time Andrea spent with Rob, her lover of the last 2 years. They spent time at his place, usually during the day or after work, and spent an hour or two together. Andrea took a shower before heading home and then met the girls and talked about football, school, and whatever else they wanted to discuss. But now I know. I knew that my wife was no longer fully my wife. It partly belonged to someone else. She divided her life between her family and her lover, Rob. This realization slowly penetrated my mind. My rational brain knew that everything had changed. The emotional brain was catching up. The emotional brain was looking for a great rift between Andrea, my loving wife and mother of my 3 children, and Andrea, the cheating bitch who had sex with another man, trying to make it normal. I've never met Rob. I really didn't want to meet him. I was worried that I would lose control and do something stupid that would get me in trouble with the police and end up in jail. This will only make my life hell. Not that she wasn't already. The words of my lawyer, Roy, kept ringing in my head. Don't do anything stupid, John. Third week. Every morning I went to work with a knot in my stomach. I had to really focus on what I was doing at work. My boss, Ron Walton, noticed that I was often not paying attention to what was happening around me. He is a very good person and kind of a father and mentor to me. He invited me for coffee and in his very quiet way tried to get me to tell him what was bothering me. I was practically avoiding the topic, but Ron wasn't going to let it go that easily. John, you haven't been yourself lately. Whatever it is, I have to be honest with you, it's starting to affect your work. You make little mistakes that you usually never make. Others notice them before something big goes wrong, but damn it, you gotta get back in the game, mate. That's all. Simple and clear. I exhaled and looked at the cup of coffee in my hand. I'm sorry, Ron. I know I haven't been giving you my best these past few weeks. I exhaled again. I have a personal problem that I'm trying to solve. I don't know what to do about it, and yes, it affects my work. I will pull my head out of my ass and promise to do better. He looked at me with an expression. John, whatever it is, I will do whatever I can to help. All you have to do is ask, okay? If you need some free time to work on it, just say so and it's yours. You're a good guy and I want you to be part of the team, so if you need anything from me, just say it. He stood up to leave and put his hand on my shoulder. I'm serious, whatever you need. He left me to think for a while. I knew that Andrea and her revelations about her extramarital affair with her lover were affecting me to the point where I was having difficulty sleeping, concentrating on work, and simply functioning. I may not be able to make her stop the affair, but I needed to do something for myself. I needed to keep my sanity and focus on what was important. I kept thinking about my 3 daughters. I went back to see Roy. I asked him to start with that postnuptial agreement he had talked about with his marriage counselor. What did I have to lose? Fourth week. Today is Tuesday, and I got home around 6 in the evening. Andrea was home, and I decided today would be a good time to talk to her. The children were doing homework at the dining table, and Andrea was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She's a good cook and tries to make sure we all eat right. Today we have meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green peas. This is one of the children's favorite dishes. After dinner and cleaning up the dirty dishes, I sent the girls to the yard to play football. We didn't have any training or activities today, and Andrea didn't say she had to go back to work. I went out into the yard and played with the children. The gloomy feeling that had enveloped my mind gradually passed as I decided to take control of the situation and do something that would at least make it easier for me to accept Andrea's dry statement about a month ago that she needed a lover for a side and that she will continue to put family first in her life. Her dedication to me and the children was truly admirable. Yes. After the kids went to bed, I pulled out a bottle of Andrea's favorite white wine from the refrigerator and grabbed an IPA for myself. I poured some wine and beer and placed them on the dining table. Andrea did the same thing a few weeks ago when we discussed our problem. I walked into our home office, where she was working on her laptop, and stood in the doorway. Andrea, please come to the dining room. We need to discuss something. Her head turned sharply towards me, and I walked away. A moment later, she came out and sat down at the table. She looked a little pale, so I passed her a glass of wine. You'll need this. Andrea took the glass and took a small sip. What do you want to talk about, dear? I took a small sip of beer and began. A few weeks ago, you surprised me by admitting that you had another man. Since then, you have said that you intend to continue this. I have to be honest with you and say that I still haven't. I can handle the thought of sharing you with another man. You don't share me with anyone, John. I'm your wife and you're my husband. That's all. What I do once a week with Rob has nothing to do with our marriage. It's purely for fun. No different than if you were playing squash with someone other than me. She took another sip. I understand that you see it that way, but I don't see it the same way. For me, it's a matter of intimacy, which I believe can only be shared between us. She started to say something, but I raised my hand to stop her. Let me finish, please. She took another sip. I've consulted 2 different people to help me deal with this problem, and I have to say that a big part of me regrets that you ever told me about your sexual relationship with this man. You mean Rob? Yes, him. Are there other men? I never asked you about that. Do you have anyone else? No, honey. He's the only one. Were there others before him? No, dear. I looked at the large gray envelope on the table containing the document Roy had prepared. I took a long sip and exhaled, thinking about testing my children's DNA to see if I was really their father. Who knows, maybe she's lying to me. What's in the envelope, dear? I was with my lawyer, Roy, you know him. Andrea's face immediately became very serious, and she turned even more pale. I saw him and a marriage counselor. Both recommended that we create some kind of written agreement that would give both of us some boundaries for our marriage. The marriage counselor told me that more and more couples are using such agreements to openly discuss many things that remain unexpressed. When I started reading about it, I was amazed at how specific such agreements can be about a lot of things that we don't talk about at all. I took another sip of beer. I wasn't sure we needed this relationship agreement, and I wasn't at all sure Andrea would agree to it. But to be honest, I didn't know what else to do other than turn a blind eye to everything she did. But could I do it? Could I just ignore her relationship with another man? I knew it would eventually eat away at me to the point where I would lose control and do something stupid like try to kick her out or hurt her and him in some way. I allowed Roy and the marriage counselor to convince me that using this relationship agreement as a tool to make Andrea understand the impact her behavior was having on our marriage would force her to reconsider her desires. Will she decide to end her affair, or will she decide to leave me and the kids? The third option for her is to accept this agreement and continue everything as it is. If she chooses the third option, there will be big consequences for her later. This relationship agreement, unfortunately, provides for the presence of a third party in the relationship. For Andrea, this is an opportunity to see her lover Rob regularly, but she has to be honest with me and tell me what she's doing. I must agree not to make a scene or interfere in her relationship with him. The flip side of this agreement is that I can do the same thing. There are consequences to our actions, and this is one of them. So I asked a marriage counselor to draft this document, and then asked Roy to review it to make sure it was fair for both of us. Andrea looked at me, then at the envelope, and took a long sip of wine. Her eyes were slightly wider, and her expression surprised. I continued, since you said you need more than I can give, I am concerned about our situation as a family. I want our girls to be at the center of our decisions, both individually and as a family. They deserve it, and they are my first priority, despite everything that happens between us. Andrea took another sip. John, you're scaring me a little. Are you saying you want a divorce? Oh no, on the contrary, honey. I want us to stay together. I don't want to lose you. I love you very much, and I want to continue to love you. I just want to make sure the girls are protected no matter what we do. I paused, not out of dramatic necessity, but to take a sip. I needed this to continue. I know that some things have changed for you, but if you agree, I want this agreement to give us both some rules, boundaries, so that the girls see that they have a mother and father, and that they grow up in a stable family. Andrea's face brightened noticeably. I was a little worried that you wanted to get a divorce. You know I love you. You know the girls, and you are always first on my mind. I wondered how she could put family first on a Thursday when her lover Rob was having sex with her. This doesn't make sense at all. I looked her straight in the eyes. Thank you. After a short pause, I continued, pointing to the envelope. So, this is the draft relationship agreement. I want you to look at it and tell me if this is fair. Everything here can be changed. We just have to agree on what it will be. Andrea frowned slightly. Do you really think we need a written agreement to govern our marriage? We've managed it just fine for the last 11 years and have 3 kids without one. I looked straight at my wife. Ever since you confessed to me a month ago about Rob and your intention to continue dating him, I thought it best to set some rules. I mean, if you want to continue dating him or anyone else, and if you want me to agree with this, then we need to make sure that our marriage takes into account the things that provide us stability. I can't just sit here and say nothing without letting you know that I'm worried about us, for our future as a couple and as a family. I just can't do anything to protect what we have. Andrea, my God, I had no idea that John would be so worried about what I was doing to Rob. It has nothing to do with him. I'm not taking anything away from us to give to Rob. Rob is just sex. Pointless, yes, but it is useful for me. I tried to ignore it as if it shouldn't mean anything to him, and I don't want it to mean anything to him. I am John's wife. I love him. Dot. Now this whole situation is starting to get out of control. I know John has been cold to me for the last month. I thought that when he forgot about it, we would return to normal life. I realized that we haven't been close in any meaningful way over the past month. I just realized that he never touched me unless we were with the kids, and then only to the minimum. Oh shit, we haven't had sex for a month. Oh, what does it mean? Is he afraid of me? Is he moving away from me? Is he moving away from our marriage? Is this all leading up to getting me out the door? God, I urgently need to do something to prevent this from getting out of control. What kind of relationship agreement does he have? John. So, Andrea, I want you to look into this, and then we will discuss it. I want us to agree on everything before we decide to live by this agreement. What do you think? John, I don't need some paper document to tell you that I love you and our daughters. I looked at Andrea, and you know I never thought I needed a paper document to say I love you. But when you brought another man into our lives, and into my life too, it changed everything. I gave her time to process this and took a sip of beer. I need to know a few things. This includes understanding your long-term intentions. Are you planning on eventually trading me for a new man? Do you want to move on at some point? This Rob thing has me very confused, honey. Part me saying that you feel like I'm not good enough for you anymore. I don't satisfy you enough. Oh, John, no, that's not true at all. We've already talked about this. Rob is just something I need to satisfy what's just there, and we have so much to do as a couple and as family that it just doesn't affect me. That's why it happens during the day. I satisfy the itch, then I get myself in order and return home to my real life and family. I never thought for a second that I wanted a different life, except for the one I have with you and the girls. I even thought that we should have more children. This struck me to the core. What? I took a sip. A million thoughts flashed through my head in the blink of an eye. Do you want more kids? I think it's possible. We need to talk about it, but what's wrong with making our family bigger? You and I love children. Our daughters are the center of our lives. Have you ever thought about a son? I was completely taken aback by Andrea's announcement that we should have a 4th child. I mean, when would we, or rather she, find time for another child? She is already very busy with her job as a real estate agent, and 3 children takes up a lot of her time. How will she cope with the pregnancy? Oh wait, maybe this is her way of saying she's already pregnant. Crap. And who is the father? Rob, the same lover. When would you like to have this baby? We can start any time. Hell, now's the time. Let's go. Andrea put down her glass of wine, grabbed my hand, and dragged me into our bedroom. It wasn't Thursday, so I won't get leftovers after Thursday. Sex with my wife has always been great, but tonight she made an extra effort. We started in the shower, then moved to the bed and all around for what seemed like an eternity. The sheets and bedspread were in a tangled mess on the floor when we finished. I was physically exhausted and in a state of complete confusion. The next day, at breakfast, I told Andrea to take the envelope with the relationship agreement with her and look at it. I still wanted to sort out a few things before she continued her Thursday routine. I wanted her to understand that there could be consequences, that we can't just pretend that we have an open marriage and everything will be fine. No. This document is the relationship agreement between Andrea Stewart and John Stewart. It comes into force on the date of their mutual signatures and governs their marriage and the relationship between them, and most importantly, those rules that they agree to observe for the good of the marriage, given that they have 3 children and that they both recognize and agree that the well-being children trump all other considerations in their marriage. Both Andrea and John agree that breaking this agreement will not necessarily result in the end of their marriage and relationship, but will signal the need to reconsider this agreement and take action to correct their individual behavior, or they will both agree to change this agreement. The points in this agreement are not necessarily in order of importance and do not include every aspect of a relationship or marriage, but are listed to bring attention to them and give them meaning. We agree never to threaten the relationship casually, during arguments, or in front of our children, families, or others. Serious disagreements will be discussed privately between us. We agree to take responsibility for our own emotional reactions, our fears and anxieties, and for ourselves in general. We agree to consciously make time for ourselves as individuals. We agree to have a weekly evening together, without distractions, without cell phones. We agree to strive for personal growth by remaining patient with ourselves and each other, and not expecting growth to happen in any specific time frame. This recognizes the need to consider each other's career aspirations and needs. We agree to invest a lot of effort in self-care so that we can bring the best of ourselves into our relationships. This recognizes that each of us has a responsibility to be as healthy and fit as possible, and that the effects of physiological problems should not affect the other. In addition, if we have any sexual relations outside of marriage, we agree to be regularly tested for possible sexually transmitted diseases and to immediately report the results to each other. We recognize that we do not necessarily make each other happy, but that we bring our personal happiness into the relationship to share it with each other. We agree to tell each other the truth, even when it is difficult. We agree to assume that the partner always acts in our best interests. We agree to leave room for 3 separate entities in our partnership: you, me, and the other relationship. We agree to spend 1 day a week together without phones in order to be completely focused on each other. This is separate from the evening date. We agree to have sex at least once every 2 weeks. We agree to welcome and respect any emotions coming from the other and promise not to take them personally. We agree to de-escalate our fights with a "stop, I love you" when one or both of us feels like we've gone too far in our defensiveness, feeling threatened or scared. We agree to value and respect each other's every emotional revelation and accept any tears that need to be shed in the safe space of our relationship. We agree not to exceed the value of birthday/anniversary/holiday gifts of $200. We agree to do our best to honor all intentions stated in this agreement and to be patient and loving with ourselves and each other when we inevitably make temporary mistakes. This agreement expresses our intentions and commitments to each other. It is not intended to be all-inclusive and is subject to change and addition by mutual consent of Andrea and John. This agreement is not intended to limit our obligations to each other. Our signatures below signify our intentions and commitments. John Stewart, Andrea Stewart. 6th week. Andrea, this relationship agreement was a stupid idea. I don't understand why John listened to the lawyer and that marriage counselor. None of them knew me at all. I met old Roy once and never met the consultant. It was a woman, and by all accounts, she believed that I could be kept with the help of this document that she had helped draw up. I don't need any agreement to run my marriage to John. John is mine, and I am his. Simple and clear. We have children, and we are a family. Simple and clear. We stay together. Simple and clear. I'll sit down with John this weekend, and we'll talk about it. I'm not going to live by some ridiculous written agreement that dictates what I can and can't do. Week 10. John. Work and life are slowly killing me. I have very little time for myself. I need to go for a run and blow off some steam. My stress level is gradually increasing, and I have to do something to get it under control. My home life was chilly, to say the least. My attempt to get Andrea to accept the relationship agreement started off slowly. Finally, after some back and forth between us, she reluctantly came to an agreement. It has been significantly shortened from the original document that Roy prepared for me. The agreement stated that we would allow each of us, within the framework of our marriage, the opportunity to have extramarital affairs, provided that they did not interfere with our marriage and our family. There should be no emotional aspect or romantic involvement. If this happens, it will signal the end of the marriage, and then the real struggle will begin. I quietly returned to Roy and informed him of the new agreement and asked him to prepare a contingency plan in case the marriage broke down to fight for custody of the girls. He's working on it now. Week 12. Andrea, my Thursday satisfaction sessions continue, and I plan to continue them for some time to come. John and I start having sex again. We had a period of inactivity for about 3 months. It was a terrible time. I really need my husband more than he thinks. He thinks I don't love him, but I do. He loves me, I know that. That's why he went to all this trouble, visiting a lawyer and a marriage counselor, and creating this ridiculous relationship agreement. I guess he could try to kick me out of the house, but he knows that would only hurt the girls and cause a lot of problems. No, I'm not worried about that. What I really need is to make sure my husband knows how much I love him and how much I enjoy it when he makes love to me. John is wonderful. He is a great husband and a great father. What else do I need? Plus, my Thursdays fill in the gaps in our sex life, so my life is going well at the moment. This weekend, I will have sex with my husband so that he knows that I am his and he is mine. The man will be exhausted when I'm done with him. Yes, then we can return to normal life. Week 16. John. I decided a while ago that I needed to do something for myself away from my family. I ran a lot at university and for a while after that, and then life and family got in the way. I decided I wanted to try kayaking and cycling. I did some research and found several local clubs that hold meetings and have a good database of lakes, rivers, and trails. I bought a trek bike, a mountain bike, and a 13-foot kayak. It has both a rudder and a keel, which gives it stability and maneuverability. I took 2 evenings of kayaking lessons to get started and started cycling in the mornings and on weekends. Last Sunday, we had a family day planned for a hike and a picnic. Just before we were supposed to leave, Andrea received a call from a client and had to cancel at the last minute. The girls and I went without her. We drove my old Subaru Outback, and I let Diane sit in the front. She's already big enough to sit in the front. She's so mature for her age. We walked for about 3 hours to get to the viewpoint on the mountain. I pulled out my nice Nikon camera, and the girls all got a chance to take photos. We had lunch, and then walked back to the parking lot. It rained on the way down the hill, but we all had rain jackets, so it wasn't a big problem. It was already after 7 o'clock when we returned home. Andrea was waiting for us. She changed into jeans and a blouse and started preparing dinner. We had a very nice family dinner, and the girls proudly showed off their photos on the old laptop we have for this purpose. The girls were tired after a day of outdoor activities and physical activity, so they didn't argue much when it was time to double-check homework for school, wash up, and go to bed. They were all fast asleep shortly after 9 o'clock. Andrea was busy around the house, cleaning and getting ready for Monday. She then looked at me and said in a very gentle tone, "I need your help in the bathroom in a minute, honey." "I'll be right there." A couple of minutes later, I went to the bedroom, but didn't see Andrea and looked into the bathroom. She was there, naked, turning on the water in the shower. She looked at me with an inviting look and entered the shower. She looked absolutely gorgeous. Even after 3 pregnancies, my wife, after 11 years of marriage, was still a woman who turned me on instantly. The sight of Andrea naked made me freeze. My face turned slightly red as I thought about another man touching my wife, enjoying her body, and the hardest thing is that she likes it. In an instant, I realized that I was in a very important competition. A competition to get my wife back from that other man and make her mine only. If she wants sex, well, screw it, she'll get sex. And I will work like a demon to make her understand that I play to win. I needed sex too. I became more and more frustrated, and even my increased training couldn't reduce what I wanted. In fact, getting fitter only made it worse. I needed to have sex. I intended to have sex with my wife. Without saying a word, I stepped into the shower. I looked at Andrea like it was dinner that I had been waiting for all day. The rest of the night was a blur for me. All I remembered the next morning was incredible satisfaction. I had sex with my wife for what seemed like forever. Monday is always a busy day at my job, and this was no exception. I started the day with a lot of things to do and focused on moving my many projects forward. After all, that's how we make money in this business. A couple of times I thought about calling or texting Andrea, but didn't. I got busy with other things, and time passed as usual. Week 17. Andrea. Last week was the hottest sex I've ever had with John. My God, he was more persistent and demanding than I had ever seen. He is usually very loving and makes sure that sex is an act of love. I feel taken care of with him. I am the center of his universe. When we make love, it's slow and gentle. We take our time with each other, and in the end well, I know he loves me, and he knows I love him. He is my world. Him and our 3 daughters. Last Thursday, I compared John to Rob. Rob is a little taller, but he's no better sex-wise than John. I don't have sex with Rob out of love. I have sex with Rob because he is a bit dominant, and I like to be dominated to a certain extent. I like Rob's persistence. He wants control. I pretend to give it to him. In fact, I control Rob, and that's what feeds my consciousness. I can manipulate Rob so easily to get what I want. My husband is a completely different matter. He and I are a team. I'm not taking control away from him, but sharing it. We both have things we're good at, and we share family responsibilities so that everything gets done with minimal fuss. Mostly, we're not perfect, not by a long shot, but we do all the important things we need to do first, and then plan for the fun times. Sometimes the ordinary facts of life get in the way, and we don't have as much fun as we would like. This includes sex with John. At the end of the day, we are both usually exhausted, and so we end up in bed with him behind me and his arm wrapped around me. It's really comforting for me to have my husband behind me and know that this man is mine. Chance encounters with Rob satisfy the itch John can't scratch. And by the evening on weekdays, who has the energy? Damn it. So I need Rob. To satisfy my selfish needs. It makes me a happy and better wife and mother. On Thursday, I return home happy and with a smile on my face, greeting my husband and children. Thursdays give me energy for the whole week. Then I come back to the reality of life, family, work, and other things that need to be done. I'm looking forward to the weekend when John and I can make love. I want him inside me so bad that it's all I think about all day on Saturday. The girls are our priority most weekends, but after they go to bed, it's time for John and me. Week 22. John. My cycling group is planning a weekend trip. It starts at a location about an hour's drive from the city and follows a series of trails and roads through the countryside. I am planning to go and have already registered. We'll have dinner on Saturday night and a big event afterwards. Most people will probably have a couple of beers. I've been trying to avoid alcohol for the past few months, both to reduce excess calories and to keep your emotions under control. When you're angry or upset, alcohol is not your friend. Therefore, it is better to stay away from him and maintain your sanity. Overall, my fitness level has increased significantly. I continue to run almost every day, and adding cycling training has greatly strengthened my legs. I noticed that my pants were getting tighter, so I bought a new pair of pants made for a more athletic body type. There are about 100 people registered for this event, so it should be a great time. Andrea. John spends more and more time outside, mountain biking and kayaking. He gets up at 5 a.m. and runs for more than an hour, then showers and gets ready for work. His breakfast consists of fruit and yogurt and a cup of coffee. I walk the kids to the school bus stop and then go to work. John is usually at home when the children return, or they go to the neighbors. We have an agreement with them that the girls can go there for an hour or so until John or I get home. This weekend, John is going on a group trip somewhere out of town. He told me he was leaving on Friday and would be back around 7 o'clock on Sunday. The new bike was delivered here on Wednesday. It was brought from a bike shop. I was at home when the man brought it to the door. He is red. That's all I know about bicycles. When John got home, he dropped everything, changed into cycling clothes, and immediately went for a ride. An hour later, he returned, smiling and admiring what a great bike it was. John, I had a great time this weekend. My new Trek Marlin 6 is a fantastic bike. The pace was very fast and the terrain was almost lethal. I sweated like a dog and started to cramp a couple of times when I exerted myself too much. I fell a few times while cornering, but luckily both I and the bike escaped with only minor scratches. On Sunday morning, I had a flat tire. There was a support car nearby, and I quickly fixed it and got back into the race. On Saturday night, we had a buffet at the hotel where we were all staying, followed by a bonfire. I drank beer. It was a chance to talk to a lot of the people I see on my weekly rides and swap cycling stories. I met Jane and her sister Judy, or Judy and her sister Jane. Either way, they are both in their early 30s and great cyclists. Judy lives with her boyfriend, who works for a company that makes skateboards and sells them to dealers. She said they are actually made in China, painted in a warehouse somewhere in the S, and then shipped to retail stores and sold online. Jane mentioned that her boyfriend is a bit of a weirdo. Judy frowned at her sister. Judy is an elementary school teacher. Jane is an aspiring lawyer working at a firm in the city. She is single again since her marriage broke up 2 years ago. The guy one day decided that he wanted something other than Jane. She didn't say much, but based on the hints, I knew she had made a mistake in marrying this guy, and divorce was correcting that mistake. Aren't divorces all about fixing mistakes? Anyway, I had a great time over the weekend, especially meeting Jane and Judy, especially with Jane. Week 25. John, it's getting cooler at night now that fall is almost here. The children return to school. I have several new projects starting at work. I found out that the law firm my company uses is the same one Jane works for. Her full name is Jane Francis. I also learned that she was doing a rotation in the contract law department. I saw her at a meeting in the building where my office is located. She spotted me walking past the conference room they were using and waved at me. I noticed her out of the corner of my eye and didn't recognize her at first. She looked very different in a light brown business suit with her hair pulled back into a bun as opposed to her bike outfit and ponytail. She had light makeup on, and I was immediately struck by how beautiful she was. She looked very elegant. I quickly wrote a note. If you have time, I'm in the office on the 4th floor and can treat you to a delicious lunch, a sandwich and coffee from the 4-star cafe on the 1st floor. I also wrote my office phone number on the note. As quietly as I could, I opened the conference room door, walked in, and placed the note in front of Jane. She looked over her shoulder at me, and I left without interrupting their meeting. An hour or so later, I heard a knock on my open office door, and there she was standing. Okay, I heard on good authority that you can get a sandwich here and something to wash it down. I stood up, picked up my jacket, and smiled and said, the tuna is especially good, and if you don't like tuna, they have a great egg salad. On the way to the cafe, I complimented Jane on her new look, unlike the cycling clothes I usually see her in. By the way, the bike shorts she wears hug her butt like a second skin, so I know how good her figure is. The skirt she was currently wearing was quite modest in comparison. Lunch was simply a conversation between two cycling acquaintances. Several people from my group came in for food, and I noticed that they were looking at us, trying to figure out if there was something going on between us. Unfortunately for them, I disappointed them. Week 27. The cycling club held its final event of the year. It was a one-day, 100-mile race. Most of the race was on roads, but about 15 miles were off-road. Most of the roads were dirt, So the conditions meant you could expect to finish with several pounds of mud on you and your bike. I fell 4 times, so in addition to dirt, I also had scratches and abrasions. Nothing disinfects open wounds like dirt. The bike performed very well, never puncturing a tire. I made a mental note to look for a more competitive bike for next year. Lighter, perhaps, but lighter also means more expensive, and I'm not willing to spend the cost of a small car on a mountain bike just yet. There was a crew at the finish line with water hoses to wash the dirt off the bikes and competitors, so I was able to get most of the dirt off. Jane finished a little behind me, and we swapped stories about the tough race. She also fell a few times and had her own scratches. Her sister Judy finished ahead of us and was already celebrating her place in the top 20. It was already cold, and we all had foil blankets wrapped around us to keep warm. There were several RVS, and Jane pulled me by the hand towards one of the large RVS. "Did you bring a change of clothes?" Yeah. I looked towards my car. "Well, go get your things." I walked to my car, grabbed my bag, and put my bike on the rack. I didn't even bother locking it, since it was one of the cheapest bikes here, and it was unlikely that anyone would take it. I've realized over the past few months that true cycling fans spend thousands of dollars on expensive bikes without batting an eyelid. Some of these people would rather give up food than not have a high-end bike. They were about our age and told us to go inside their RV and wash ourselves. They said the water tank was almost full, so go ahead and take a shower. It was warm inside. We took off our shoes and socks, and I looked around thinking this was really cool. Jane went to the back of the RV and opened the door to the bathroom. While I was getting clean clothes, she said, "Come here, John." "Just a second." I looked up and Jane was standing there naked. "Take off your dirty clothes while I turn on the shower. We'll both get in at the same time to save water." There was a sly smile on her face. I didn't know what to do. And then I realized all this in an instant. I quickly undressed. Jane turned on the water and stepped into the shower stall. The nozzle had a shut-off valve, and she aimed it at the wall, regulating the water temperature. She reached out and pulled me into the shower. Suddenly, I'm standing, naked, with a beautiful and dirty woman in someone else's RV, taking a shower with her. You know what happened. Yes, I'm horny. There was not enough room in the shower for two. Jane used the nozzle to wash my hair, then pointed it at my head. A swirl of mud flowed into the drain. Then she turned around and asked me to wash her back. Oh my God. "Turn around, I'll wash your back." I turned around and my shoulder rubbed against her chest. She washed my back. I felt her hands rubbing my neck, shoulders, back, and buttocks. Then, I was in a haze, realizing that I was having sex with this beautiful woman I had been secretly admiring since we met in the summer. I heard a knock on the RV door. "Hey, you two, don't use all the water. Others need to wash up too." I shouted back, "We'll finish now." We turned on the water for a few more seconds to give ourselves a final rinse. We got out of the shower, dried ourselves off, and put on clean clothes. We quickly gathered up our dirty clothes and headed outside to the embarrassed smiles of the couple who owned the RV. The look he gave me said it all. "You're lucky and damn it at the same time." What he really said was, "I hope you enjoyed your shower." I simply nodded and replied, "Thank you very much." It was announced that there was a pub nearby where there would be an informal meeting for food, and everyone who could was invited to join. I just looked at Jane, and she looked at me and said, "We'll be there." After making sure all my belongings were secured and stowed, I sat in the car, thinking to myself, what the hell just happened? I took a deep breath and realized that I had just had sex with one of the few women in my life who truly fascinated me. Andrea was first, but in the heat of the moment with Jane, I never thought about her. Is this what she thinks about me, or rather what she doesn't think about when she has sex with her lover? Wow, I didn't know at that moment, but I knew that my life would eventually change. I drove to the pub and walked in. The place began to fill with people loudly exchanging stories about today's race. The fall stories were the most popular and caused a lot of laughter when people showed their, in some cases, still bleeding hands, feet, and faces. My cell phone was off, so I decided to turn it on and text Andrea to let her know I would stop for something to eat before heading back. I'll probably be back quite late, and she should put the kids to bed and not wait for me. She said okay and asked how I did in the race. I told her I was done and sent her a photo of the scratch on my leg. She sent back a sad face emoji and said, "Drive carefully." After eating and 2 Cokes, I decided it was time to hit the road. Jane was nearby and noticed that Judy had disappeared. She asked if I could give her a ride home. Along the way, Jane wanted to know more about Andrea. I didn't know where her questions were leading at that moment, but I also realized that I had little to lose by talking about my life. We spoke. We both talked about our lives. I told her about my 3 daughters, how they are the most important thing in my life. But I also said that I realized last year that my life was passing me by and I needed to do something for myself. That's why I took up cycling and kayaking. I needed to get out, break a sweat doing something other than housework, and challenge myself. I tried not to talk about Andrea more than necessary. The last thing I wanted to talk about was my wife having sex with another man on Thursdays. When I arrived at Jane's house, I got out and took her bike off the rack. She took her bag out of the back seat and stood looking at me. "Do you want to come in?" I knew that if I went in, something would happen. Right at that moment, I wanted it more than anything. After what seemed like an eternity, but was only a few seconds, I nodded yes. Without turning her head, she pointed to the right and said, "Park there." Sunday 34. Andrea, my Thursday classes continue. I really enjoy spending a couple of hours with Rob. I try my best not to let my enjoyment of it affect the rest of my life. I try to be a good mother and a good wife. I love my children and I love my husband. He works very hard to provide for his family. Over the last few weeks, I've noticed a slight change in John's attitude. It's not explicit, but it's true. I didn't notice this until about a month ago, and then I wouldn't have noticed if I didn't have a mental checklist that I go through after time with Rob to make sure there aren't any obvious signs of my time with him. I started to notice some similarities. John is a very serious person, always focused like a laser on his goals and rarely gets distracted. Because of his serious attitude, it is sometimes difficult to get him to relax and be carefree. It happens like this, but in a very controlled way. His wild and crazy side is shown rarely and only in circumstances that he deems appropriate for such behavior. That's why my girls always try to make him laugh at stupid jokes and antics. John laughs at them, but the girls know that their father is a rather serious man. But lately, John began to smile and joke with the children much more often, trying to make fun of them. Girls love it. So what's going on? John spent a lot of time in the summer and fall biking and kayaking, but the weather is not suitable for these activities. He still gets up early in the morning and runs for an hour. This is it. Does this make him happier? Our level of intimacy was less than I would have liked. What's happening? Oh shit, I just realized. He has found another woman who gives him what he thinks he is missing with me. Damn it. Sunday 36. John. I had time after lunch and planned to meet Jane at a cafe near my office. We go there often to grab a quick bite and then go to her condo. This is the best moment of my day when we can spend time together. I hate to say it, but I understand why Andrea enjoys her weekly meetings with her boyfriend. No wonder she comes home happy. I know that I too come home happy. So we're even. We both get what we want. I wonder how long this will last. What I mean is that at some point Jane will get tired of having recreational sex with me and want to move on to a man who can propose to her. And I can't blame her. Look at her. She is gorgeous, very fit, and a real lady. This woman has it all. Sunday 40. Andrea, there is not much time left before Thanksgiving, and we are going to my family, my parents. They live about an hour's drive from here, and we see them often. Thanksgiving and Christmas are 2 times of the year when girls enjoy the company of their grandparents. They are spoiled with all the treats and sweets they can handle. John is noticeably happier lately than I remember being in the last couple of years. He barely touches me unless the girls are around and our sex is love. It's just sex. John is no longer the gentle and caring person he used to be. He's much more physical now. Now is his chance to take out his frustrations on me. But I promised John that I would never refuse him. Is this the kind of marriage life I want? Have I ruined everything to the point where the man I love is just doing his duty with me? Maybe Rob was a bad idea. Perhaps the itch I want to scratch should be scratched by John. I need to figure this all out. I hope it's not too late to make things right. Sunday 43. Jane. I love the time I spend with John. He makes me feel like I'm the only woman on the planet. He finds the right balance between sweaty sex and love that I need. I love the way his skin touches mine. We spend a couple of hours together and then go back to work and our lives. I know he has a wife and children, and I respect that he has to do what is best for them and for him. I control my expectations for John. I tell myself that I shouldn't let this attitude go beyond entertainment, and so far this is so. I'm just not sure how much longer this will last. Not for any of us. Sunday 48. Andrea. Christmas was a busy time. All the normal things kids love at Christmas means we took the time to spend it with family and doing the things that make us who we are. Lots of food, laughter, and winter activities. We went ice skating and skiing. We watched a lot of movies and enjoyed the leisurely days. Both John and I took a few days off. I tried to reconnect with John. There had been distance between us since the spring when I admitted to him that I had weekly meetings with Rob. I tried to hold his hand at every opportunity. He held my hand for a few seconds and then slowly released it. I told him I wanted to talk to him about us. 2 nights later, after the girls had gone to bed, John surprised me by pouring me a glass of wine and himself a rare beer. He had hardly drunk alcohol in recent months. Andrea, I have a question for you. It's something that's been bothering me ever since you told me about your boyfriend. He's not my boyfriend, honey. He's just someone who satisfies a need I have once a week. John took a sip of his drink. He said in a very quiet and dark voice, "So tell me, where have I failed? What does he do for you that I don't or can't do? Why do you want sex with another man?" He asks difficult questions. John continued, looking me straight in the eyes. "What is your need that I can't satisfy?" Damn, what am I going to tell my husband? I don't even know why I do what I do. It's been creeping up on me for a long time. I started to want sex with you, but it was during the day when we were both at work, and there was no way the itch would be scratched. I looked at the floor, table, and ceiling, trying to find the right answer to tell my husband that what I was doing to Rob had nothing to do with him and was not a judgment on him. I'd come home, and there would be the girls and all the things we needed to do. By the time we put the girls to bed, one of us still had some work to do. Something kept getting in the way. I thought that I was having a nervous breakdown. I thought about sex all the time. I wanted sex. I took a long sip of wine and looked at John's face. I saw that he was in pain. John took a small sip. Andrea, I have to tell you that even though you say it has nothing to do with me, I feel like it has everything to do with me. No, dear, you haven't failed at anything. You're a wonderful husband. So why do I feel the opposite? Why do you think you need to have sex with this guy to feel satisfied, content, happy? I quickly dug my own grave. When I started with Rob, I tried to make sure that this part of my life was well isolated from my family life. Rob understands that what we do is just random and that there is no obligation between us. We use protection and check in to make sure we don't have anything that could threaten each other or my husband. Our time is limited to once a week for a couple of hours. But at the end of these 2 hours, I leave with a feeling of satisfaction that helps me before my husband. I can be a better wife for him. I'm happy with the feeling Rob can give me. I'm happier as a wife. I realized that everything was falling apart. My carefully constructed life was crumbling right then and there. And then John threw me a lifeline. I don't own you. I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you that what you do in the long run has consequences. Consequences for you, for me, and for the girls. I can't make you stop. Relationship with this man. I can only tell you that well, I will do what I need to do to survive. Don't get me wrong, I don't want a divorce or separation or living as friends under the same roof. I do. Your wife. He took another sip of his beer. I want you all, but I'm willing to take what I can get. So if you plan on continuing your Thursday nights with him, well, I'll just adjust and get through it. Wow, I dodged that bullet. What John didn't tell me was that he had a plan too. A plan that will seriously affect my plan. John. Andrea and I had a difficult conversation about our marriage. I wanted to know what was going on in her head that made her have sex with another man. How did I fail as a husband and lover? What am I not doing for her? What didn't I notice? Am I that indifferent? Maybe yes. I also wanted to tell her that her actions have consequences. But at the same time, I didn't want to threaten my wife with something that I didn't intend to do. Divorce, separation, all this would look like an ultimatum. And I didn't want that. I wanted Andrea to change because she wants to. I couldn't tell her that she had to change. I couldn't tell her that she had to stop having sex on Thursdays with another man or else. It wouldn't work. She had to want to do it herself. I relied on the relationship agreement we had. I almost wanted to tell her that I, too, was receiving something that she could not give me. I also decided that I needed something else. Me too, well, I enjoy the opportunity to be in a relationship with another woman who doesn't judge me. I wasn't sure how long it would last, but right now I was content to know Jane as more than just a cycling buddy. She's become someone I can share intimacy with, maybe only a few hours a week, but it's certainly something I find beneficial for me. If it works for Andrea, it will work for me. Sunday 52. John. A year has passed since the great revelation. That's what I call it. A year since our marriage changed. Not everything is for the better, I note. But he has changed. The changes were not my fault. Well, not completely. Partly because of Andrea, and then partly because of me. Andrea revealed her secret lover to me. But I did not reveal my secret lover to her. There was some measure of retribution in this, I suppose. I was upset that she felt the need to have a lover in the first place. This told me that I was not a good enough husband to satisfy my wife. Oh, she swore it had nothing to do with me, but I know it does. She may be trying to save my feelings, but really she's avoiding the consequences. It took several months and advice from several people for me to realize that for my own survival, I needed to make some changes in my personal life. It was separate from Andrea and the girls. I started doing some things just for myself. I still had all my family obligations that didn't change, but I did my best to make time for the things that made me happy. I bought a mountain bike and joined a cycling club. I bought a kayak and started taking kayaking and whitewater rafting lessons. I started running more. I lost a few pounds from my waist and gained muscle mass in my legs and upper torso. I even thought about taking up boxing to burn off the frustration, but decided to start with running and cycling and go from there. It worked. I also met someone who was also into cycling, and we developed a good relationship. We see each other at bike meets almost every week in good weather and meet for lunch once a week before going over to her house for a couple of hours. She helped me cope with Andrea in ways I can't even explain. Andrea says her Thursday sessions with her lover make her a better wife. Well, time with Jane makes me a better man. I'm still not sure if this makes me a better husband. I think of it as, what's good for the gander is good for the goose. Or as a popular phrase this year, quid pro quo. Yes, that's it. Jane. Hello. I have to say that a year or so ago, I would never have thought that I would be in a relationship with a married man. I mean, only incredibly stupid women get into relationships with married men. Women who are looking for trouble of the worst kind. We've all heard stories of women who have affairs with married men and then get dumped when the woman gets too serious and expects the man to leave his wife. Is this expectation realistic, which can occur in any person with a brain? Sometimes this happens, but it's rare. Therefore, the best policy for single women is to avoid married men. But this doesn't always happen. Sometimes one of them slips past your defenses, and before you know it, You're in a relationship with him. You're thinking, damn, how did this happen? But then you get involved anyway. But you set boundaries for yourself. You try to think like a mature adult and tell yourself that you won't let him get past the point where you think he's more than just good, recreational sex. Friends with benefits. It's popular now. But after a while, when you become comfortable with him and start giving him affectionate nicknames, darling, darling, my soul, and any number of other names that your imagination can come up with, you begin to be reckless with your emotions. You start thinking about longer time frames and the what-ifs. You start making plans that you really can't turn into reality. You begin to deceive yourself. But then you come back to the present and remember that you are a different woman. You are the woman he did not promise to love, honor, and cherish until death do you part or until the court order says otherwise. But then you also remember why you got involved with him. That his wife is doing business with some young guy. So who is deceiving whom here? Am I deceiving myself, or is his wife deceiving herself? Was she being even more foolish by jeopardizing her marriage to him? Is she giving him away? Is she telling him and others that I am starting to leave this marriage? The marriage, at least for him, was not what she expected. The life she wanted did not become a reality for her. The hard work of family, work and life is not how she expected to spend her life. Where's the excitement? Where is her life? Wait a minute. Some people want this kind of life. Some people want the banality of family and security, knowing that eventually there will be children who will look to you. For life, freedom, and happiness. You are a parent, a leader, an example setter. You are the one to whom the family will come for everything that defines what a family truly is. You are the stability that is the foundation of the family. Patriarch or matriarch. Parent, mother, father. You are the one your children will come to for the rest of your life. What could be better than this? I want to. I am young, healthy, smart, and talented. I have a lot of energy, a strong work ethic, and a very good sense of right and wrong. Sometimes I'm probably too loyal, and I like the security of something reliable. I like the idea of normalcy and regularity in my life. I want to return home to the people who depend on me. But I also want to teach them to be independent. My mom and dad taught me that. It was a lesson well learned. But lately I have been feeling the need for closeness. The closeness of my own family. I want a child my own. It is time. Sunday 60. John. The cycling season is finally here. I can't wait to get out there, work hard, sweat, get dirty, and have fun. Andrea and I still manage to remain a couple. Her career in the real estate world keeps her very busy, and she continues to rave about how great it is to be in real estate. I think she enjoys her job. She communicates with clients at any time of the day or night. I have long taken it upon myself to relax with my children and spend evenings and weekends with them. We are busy with our sports and creative activities, and I swear my car engine rarely cools down before 10 p.m. When the girls are asleep, I do my own thing. Clean the house, load the dishwasher, take a shower, and lie in bed. Andrea and I spend less and less time with each other. I know she still has sex with her Thursday night boyfriend, Rob, or whatever his name is. There's nothing I can do about it. If I take action, the biggest losers will be my daughters and then me. But now they see so little of their mother, what will change? Even if I announce a divorce, she will still work 24/7, and I will be the primary caregiver. Jane and I still see each other. She's an amazing woman. What the hell should I do? This question keeps running through my mind. I need to get some insight into all this. Sunday 63. John. My boss met with me and told me about a new company project that he wants me to take part in. This will mean trips of 2 to 3 days every 2 weeks for the next few months. I went home and told Andrea about the new project, and her reaction was somewhat indifference. I mentioned that this was a possible path to promotion within the company if I did a good job at it. She simply nodded her head and continued doing what she was doing on her laptop. I don't think she was paying attention. After dinner, on my way to one of the girls' basketball practices, I told them I might go to work for a night or two every now and then. On nights like these, You guys are going to have to help mommy a little more. You know, cleaning the kitchen and making sure you do your homework. And don't go to bed later than your usual bedtime." They all laughed at this comment. My kids are good, and I knew they could be counted on to help and contribute. My eldest, Diane, who is now 12 years old and looks set to turn 32, said to me during our conversation, "Dad, does this mean that Mom will hire a nanny to stay with us?" I thought for a second. I guess she might have to do this from time to time because of her job. But I hope she doesn't have to do this very often. My daughter is a very smart little girl and quickly returned, "Well, we don't see her that much these days." This comment from a 12-year-old really resonated with me. She realized that she had not seen much of her mother. It wasn't all because of her Thursday afternoon meeting with what's-his-name, but because of her overall focus on her real estate business and how he ran it. I knew deep down that I needed to figure out what to do. At the very least, I decided that I needed to talk to Andrea and make sure she had a good understanding of what the next few months would mean for her. John. My conversation with Andrea went as expected. She agreed that my job requirements would give me a good opportunity for career advancement, and that she would, of course, take responsibility for the children. She looked at me with a surprised expression. "Don't you think I know how to take care of my children?" I don't say that at all. I was a little annoyed at her tone. What I'm trying to say, in so many words, is that you need to be willing to spend a little more time with the kids on the nights I'm gone. That's all. I continued, "I know your schedule is very loose, but sometimes you may have to reschedule or postpone some things. That's all." Andrea simply nodded at me and went back to her cell phone and the text or email she was taking care of. And that was the end. Sunday 68. John. A few important things I want to share with you. I'm diving deep into my new project, and although it's not an easy task, I know that if I focus on the engineering and technology parts, I can do it, and do it well. I met with my bank's personal account representative, and we discussed all the normal things we do twice a year. I worked to pay off my mortgage faster than my payment schedule required. This would save a ton of interest in the long run. Leanne mentioned that our other account was doing very well, and we had a good balance. I wasn't sure which account she was talking about. I thought it was our investment account that I opened 3 years ago. Every month I put some money into it and invest it in the stock markets. She looked at me strangely and said that this is the account we deposit bonus checks into. My mind was spinning, trying to figure out what the hell she was talking about. She reminded me that Andrea makes deposits into this account. Not regularly and never the same amount, but it had accumulated over the past 3 years, and now there was over $180,000 in the account. Then it hit me like a tractor trailer. My mouth hung open when I realized Andrea was trying to hide money from me. The long hours were spent hiding the fact that a significant portion of her commissions were going into her secret account. Leanne looked at her computer, and suddenly her eyes went wide, and she realized that my name was not on the account, and that she had just broken some banking rule regarding customer confidentiality. She had an "oh crap" look on her face. She quickly changed the subject and told me that the bank would be happy to reduce the interest rate on my mortgage by another 0.5 percentage point, given how much they valued me as a customer. I got the hint. Say nothing about Lina's mistake and save yourself some more money. I was fine with that. Sunday 70. John. I'm back in cycling season and enjoying it even more. I treated myself to a new, more high-tech bike. This one is a Red Trek Procaliber, lighter than my old bike, and ready to ride on both trails and roads. It will allow me to take my travel to the next level. I have been working on increasing my endurance and running up to 10 miles a day. I get up at 5 a.m., run, then shower and go to work after taking the girls to school. My old Subaru was also replaced with a new one that is designed and equipped for more extreme driving. Aggressive tires, black wheels, and dark green paint, along with a few other details, make this a really good adventure machine. Jane and Judy are riding bikes again this season. Judy and her boyfriend broke up. He moved to another part of the country, somewhere in California, to further his career. Well, with another girl with whom he started a relationship. Judy was not harmed by this and looks happy. Jane is a different story. She and I are still friends with benefits and still have fun. But it changes in very subtle ways. Andrea also changes, but in a different way. I'll try to explain as best I can. I'm not a psychiatrist, but if the last year has taught me anything, it's to be especially attentive to people. Now, I'm an engineer. We are often accused of not understanding people. We're good with machines and technical matters, but when it comes to understanding human psychology and understanding what makes people who they are, well, let's just say we often miss the obvious. I mean, that's why Andrea could cheat on me with this guy on Thursdays, and I didn't notice until the evidence fell out of her purse. I didn't follow anything. I didn't notice the little things that might have told me something was going on. But now that I'm a little more educated, I notice things. First of all, I noticed that Jane was becoming much closer to me. It's not about sex, it's about the level of intimacy that exists in a couple. These are small things. Now she calls me honey more often than she uses my name. She knows me so well that if we meet in a cafe or restaurant, she can order one of my favorite dishes for me before I arrive. She knows I drink Diet Coke and sometimes like beer, usually IPA. She knows how much I weigh and what my clothing sizes are. She knows that I love both pop and classical music. I noticed that Jane increasingly mentioned other people and their families. One day off, when I was with the girls, we went to an exhibition of mobile homes. Jane knew I would be taking the girls there and asked if she could join us. We had a great time exploring mobile homes and RVs, and it gave Jane the opportunity to get to know my daughters. Afterwards, we went to a fast food cafe and the girls started asking her questions. I told them that Jane and I met at the cycling club I belonged to. I told them that she was a really good cyclist and that she was much faster than their father. They laughed about it. My oldest, Diana, even said that their mom would never ride a mountain bike on dirt trails. This comment made Jane grin a little, almost imperceptible, but it was there. It was kind of a, yeah thing. On the way back, Diana mentioned that Jane seemed like a very nice person. I mentioned earlier that I feel like Andrea is changing in very subtle ways. She spends more time at work and takes on more clients than her time allows. She hired an assistant, a new agent, and assigned her to do most of the paperwork. This gave Andrea more time to meet people and, presumably, show properties. Her time with me and the girls is becoming less and less. She works almost every evening and most weekends. Our intimacy is almost zero. She rarely has dinner with her family. She often comes home late, showers, makes herself a drink, and then gets back on her laptop to continue working. I tried to talk to her several times, but she was always distracted by her phone or laptop. To see if she was even listening, I told her that I had booked a 3-week vacation for all of us in Europe this summer. She nodded and said, "That's good." I realized it was time to do something. I needed Roy and his expert opinion again. Is Sunday 73. John. I pulled out the relationship agreement that Andrea and I signed about a year ago. It really was a joke. I mean, how can you negotiate a marriage that has any meaning? Now I think it's almost impossible. I was in love with Andrea when we got married, and my love for her grew after the birth of each of our daughters. I thought I had the world by the tail. I had a nearly perfect family and a growing career. We lived a good life and our future seemed bright. So what went wrong? Life happened. This is what happened. Did I take Andrea for granted? Did I ignore her to my detriment? Have I failed as a husband? Have I put my priorities in the wrong order? Why is everything so confusing? And the worst thing is that my wife was not interested enough to talk to me about our marriage, and when she did, she dismissed my concerns by saying that she loved me and the children, and that everything was fine. No, it wasn't okay. If our marriage had been in order, there would not have been these Thursday meetings with her lover. There wouldn't be a giant elephant in the corner of our marriage. I decided to go to Roy. He would know what to do, or at least have a better idea of what I should do. I took a copy of the relationship agreement with me. When I arrived at Roy's office, He greeted me with his usual seriousness, which is his normal, very serious expression. Even his handshake tries to convey confidence, but I'm not sure if the man is smiling at all. "How are you, John?" I sat down. Well, where do I start? I've been worse and I've been better. The last time we spoke was over a year ago when Andrea and I agreed on this agreement. I picked it up to show it. He nodded, saying, and picked up his copy. I should have known this. Things in my life are pretty much the same as before. I mean, she still sees another man once a week. I see a woman occasionally. She's become a very good friend. I see, Roy responded to my opening statement. But did he really understand? The situation in my life has become difficult. I feel like Andrea and I are moving away from each other. She is more distant and absorbed than ever. It is difficult to talk to her when she is at home. She works more hours than before, and a few weeks ago, I discovered that she was putting money into a secret account. It's probably over $250,000. What does this all mean? I pretty much knew the answer to my question, but I needed to hear it from someone who had dealt with cases like this before. Well, John, this is all worrying for sure. I think it's time to invite someone who can help answer some of your questions. I have a very experienced investigator who can help you get information that will help you make decisions. With that, he reached for the phone and asked his assistant to call Bob. A few minutes later, the phone rang and Roy answered and spoke to Bob about some investigative work. After a few ahas, Roy turned to me and said, "He'll be here in 10 minutes." After Bob arrived and we met, he explained what he did. He also explained that he has been working with Roy, among many other lawyers, for several years. He also explained how much it would cost to find out the information I wanted. Basically, I wanted to know what Andrea was doing. I wanted to get a better understanding of her extramarital sexual activity and her secret bank account and what it was for. Bob took a lot of notes, and I could see a plan was coming together. He told me that everything I wanted to know could be found out. He has the ability to secretly find information that many of us take to be reliably protected from prying eyes. I just wanted to know what the hell my wife was doing. On the other hand, perhaps she would also like to know what I know about her and what I plan to do. Damn, this is getting complicated and ridiculous. I wrote a check to Bob as an advance, and after some handshakes, I left to consider my future. Week 75. 2 agonizing weeks passed, and finally Roy called to say Bob had a report for me. We agreed to meet the next day to discuss the information he was able to find, dig up, whatever. All night I felt like there was a knot in my stomach. I couldn't concentrate on anything to the point where my girls once again reminded me that they needed help with their homework. I shook my head and tried to do what needed to be done. Andrea was not at home as usual. The next day I rushed to Roy's office to find out what Bob had to tell me. After the greetings, we immediately got down to business. "So, John, I was busy doing what you asked last time. I must say that your wife is a very busy woman. I'll get straight to the important stuff. She's dating 2 different men. She sees each of them once or twice a day. This week, I didn't find any clear pattern and spent several hours with them. Usually, she meets with them at the same address. Damn it, and that is not all. I found out through the land and property registry that she owns an apartment in a residential building near her office. She bought it almost 2 years ago and paid it off almost in full. She has a bank account in the bank you told me about, where she currently has $321,000 in it, putting in 75% of her commissions from being a real estate agent. She has made major sales in the last 3 years, mostly commercial real estate, and based on her sales, she is the highest paid agent in the company. Partner, but she refused. We cannot find a reason why she rejected it." Bob took a sip of water before continuing. "I have the names and biographies of 2 men she is dating. These are probably the last in her history with other men. Both men live in the city. One is married and has a family, and the other is single. I get the feeling that your wife is planning some changes in the coming months. Although I do not have specific information about her exact plans, It seems that she is preparing for something. A hidden apartment and hidden money are all clear signs that a person is planning big changes. Exactly when she is going to tell you this, I don't know. It could be soon, it could be in a few months or years, or it could be never. With that, he looked at me and handed me a folder containing his written report and other information he was able to gather. Roy said, "Good job, Bob. If we need anything else, I'll call you." With this, Bob left us. I sat stunned that Andrea had expanded her extramarital affairs to 2 men. What should I do now, Roy? I looked at him as if my life had gone even further down the road to hell. Roy looked at me with an expression that said he was probably going to offer to prepare the divorce papers. After discussion, we came to the conclusion that divorce was probably approaching, but I wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet. I still had my 3 daughters to take care of, and I wanted to make sure that I could get full custody of them after any divorce or separation. That was the non-discussed part of it all. Roy exhaled deeply and opened his mouth to offer advice. "John, what do you want to do? This is all? You have a lot on your mind. I recommend you think about it for a few days. There is no rush. If Andrea does something drastic, then we can file for divorce and get it to her in a matter of hours. Unless you have major changes that you want to contribute, I know exactly what you want, and in fact the documents are already ready. All you have to do is call me and everything will be ready in a few hours." Roy even smiled when he said that last part. I nodded, thanked him, and left his office. Indeed, I had a lot to think about. I will only think about this for the next 3 days. All this time, thinking about what Andrea was really doing, I watched her carefully to notice at least something, at least some little thing that would explain why she bought a hidden apartment in the city center. I thought she wanted to use it as a love nest, a place where she can hide her activities from me. We still had that relationship agreement. We hadn't talked about it for months, but I thought it meant she had the right to have a lover. I agreed to this. This also meant that I had the right to have a mistress. Andrea agreed to this. So where does this leave us? Week 83. Jane. Okay, this is something new. I stopped taking birth control pills a couple of months ago when I decided I wanted a child in my life. I really want a husband and father for this child, but for now I will have to settle for just the baby part. I think my husband will appear when things settle down. Now, I'm not stupid, and I have resources in the legal world. I also have many colleagues who can help me with other resources when I need them. One of these resources was able to tell me that John had long ago contacted a divorce lawyer and prepared preliminary documents for a possible divorce between John and his wife Andrea. I did some covert research on Andrea, and it didn't take long before I found out just about everything she was up to. I found out that she bought herself a house in the city center, not far from her office. I found out that she paid for it in cash, which meant she was hiding the money from John. I knew that this was the work of a woman who was planning a sudden departure from her husband. This is what people did to hide their true intentions. I also knew that John would be the father of my child. He knows that I want a child. He knows that I want him to be a father. I want this man in my bed for more than just a few hours. I want him to be there all the time. I don't want to share him with another woman, a woman who needs more than one man in her life to satisfy her sexual needs. I can't understand why she needs this. John is a real man. He is already the father of her children. This man is a tiger in bed and also knows how to lovingly love a woman. He can be rough or he can be gentle. I can't get enough of him. He is smart and talented and loves children. He loves me. I love him. Week 85. Andrea. Why can't John just accept that I need more than he can give? I plan to continue to be a good wife to him and a mother to our children, but I need more than one man can give. I do not know how to explain it. It's a craving that needs to be satisfied in order for me to be happy. If I don't get satisfaction, if I don't scratch my itchy need, my world doesn't spin right. When my needs are met, I function at a much higher level. My brain makes decisions quickly. I make a lot of money. The little place I bought in the city center was so that I would have a safer place to enjoy myself when I met up with Rob and Tom. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Tom is also one of my daily pleasures. Tom is a new real estate agent with our company and just moved to the area. I allowed him to live in my city center until he found a place to live. John and the girls don't notice any changes in me. I'm still his wife and their mother. I still love John, and I know he loves me. So what if I get satisfaction in another way that doesn't affect my family? John understands we have a written agreement. We have worked out all the logistics. I get my pleasure, he gets his, and we continue to live with our daughters. Someday I will give up this business, and we will only be for each other. I know. Someday it will happen. John understands, I think. Week 92. Jane. The last few days I've been waking up and not feeling well. I usually love my morning cup of coffee to start the day, but lately the coffee has been going nowhere and coming right back. I knew what it meant. So, on the way home from work, I stopped at the local pharmacy and bought a test. He confirmed what I already knew. I called John to tell him I was going to take the test and wanted him to come see me. He was at my door after dinner, surprisingly, with his 3 daughters. I think it was appropriate for his children to be there when we find out if they are going to have a half-sibling. John's daughters were no strangers to me. We've worked out together many times over the past year. I knew them well enough to know about the activities they were involved in and how they were doing in school. John's eldest daughter, Diana, in my opinion, was much more mature than her 12 years. She was smart and knew how to see and understand what was happening in the life of her father and mother. She was observant and knew that their family was slowly changing and something big was brewing for all of them. After the girls settled into the kitchen, I took John's hand and we went to the bathroom next to my bedroom. I pulled out the test and said, "Well, this is the moment of truth." We both looked at each other and I sat on the toilet and peed on the test strip. After I washed my hands, I took a piece of white plastic and handed it to John. "Well, what does it show?" John looked at him for a few seconds and said, "It shows that you and I are going to be parents. Congratulations, Mom." John. Jane and I went to her doctor, and she confirmed that Jane was indeed pregnant. She calculated the period to be approximately 6 weeks. This was my signal to get things in order and do what needed to be done. This was something that should have happened a long time ago, but now it has become very necessary. 94th week. John. Bob, the investigator, updated me on what Andrea was doing with her lovers. There was no change in her behavior. Now is the time to act. I knew where her apartment was and did some scouting to figure out how to get there without attracting attention. It had underground parking and required key cards to enter the building and garage. I took the straight path without tricks. I came to the building and waited for her to arrive. I gave her time to park and go up to her apartment. I walked to the front door and flipped through the catalog until I found her name. She was listed as a Leighton. She used her maiden name. I called the phone and waited for an answer. A couple of minutes passed and the man answered. "Hello. I need Andrea Stewart." "Ah, there's no one here with that name." "Yes, I have. How about Andrea Leighton? Brother." "Just tell her it's her husband. I'm John Stewart, if you don't know. She is the mother of my 3 daughters." My level of frustration was quickly rising, and I had to tell myself to stay calm and not do or say anything that would make the situation worse. I heard whispers in the background and a loud damn that came through quite clearly. "Just pass her the phone or the intercom or whatever you're talking through." There was another pause, and finally Andrea spoke. "John, what are you doing here?" "It doesn't matter, Andrea. Just open the door so I can come up and we can talk." It took a minute, but finally the door buzzed. I went up to her floor and found her apartment. I knocked on the door. I heard muffled voices and realized that there was a lot of fuss to get dressed and figure out a way out of the upcoming confrontation. Finally, the door opened. I was greeted by a young man with big eyes. He looked at me with obvious fear that I had come with violent intentions. "Don't worry, I didn't come to harm you. I want to talk to my wife, and you better go somewhere. I'm sure she'll call you when she can come back." The man looked at Andrea, and she replied, "It's okay, Tom. Go have some coffee. I will call you." He looked at me with concern and took his jacket, leaving the apartment. I walked in and looked around the living room. After a few seconds, I gestured with my hand. "Good place." Andrea looked at me like the cat that caught the canary. The guilty look on her face told me everything I needed to know. "Do you have anything to drink?" Finally, she nodded. I said, "Pour yourself something, but I'd like a glass of ice water." She looked at my left hand as if I was holding a bomb or a large weapon. I was holding a large envelope. Our future was in this envelope. I took off my jacket and placed it on the back of the chair and sat down. Andrea went into the kitchen to get her wine, and I heard her putting ice in a glass and then turning on the tap. She came back and handed me a glass of water. "Honey, why did you come here? It won't do you any good." I looked at her with an expression that said, seriously, "You know why I'm here. Stop fooling yourself into thinking that you can be married to me, have a family and two lovers at the same time, and not have consequences. You're not that ignorant." She took a sip, or rather a sip, of her wine. I looked her straight in the eyes. She was clearly uncomfortable and looked at the table for a long time. The silence in the room was deafening. Finally, she spoke. "What's in the envelope?" I tried on my inner Roy expression and looked at Andrea with the sternest expression. I wanted her to be very afraid at that moment. "I'm very disappointed in you. I expected more. You took me for a fool. Last year, I gave you what you wanted. I made it so that you could have a lover on the side. I closed my eyes to this. I didn't do anything to jeopardize our family life. I even thought that you would eventually come out of this and we could be a normal family again. But ... it didn't go far. You've decided that I'm not the husband you want, that our family life is not what you need." Andrea interrupted me. "No, honey, it's not like that." "Oh, come on. This is bullshit, and you know better than to try to sell this story." At this point, I started to get excited. "If this is not so, then what kind of place is this? Tell me." Andrea looked at her hands. "And then I found out that you were creating a secret bank account." Her head rose like a box spring at this statement. How did you know about this?" "I have friends at the bank too, you know." She stammered, "It was a fund for our retirement and for the girls' education." I looked at her in disbelief, indicating that she was trying to sell more bullshit. "Oh, please, be honest with me. You fully intended to hide the money from me. You have a different life here, with your lover and your Carters, and it seems you were fully intent on escaping your family. We hardly see you at home. You come and go at strange hours. I think now I know why. Girls don't see you. They asked me where you were." The look on Andrea's face said it all. She was exposed. She knew her game was exposed. She knew that the consequences of her decisions were coming back to her. Her plan was ruined, so she decided in an instant to stop trying to deceive me. She knew it wouldn't do any good. She took a sip of wine. "What do you want to do, John?" I took the envelope I was holding and handed it to her. "See for yourself." Andrea stared at it for what seemed like an eternity and then slowly picked it up and stared at it. She unraveled the string that held the top tabs together and pulled out the contents. On top was the relationship agreement we signed last year. I took a black marker and drew a line across the first page, writing void. She set it aside and looked at the next document, Declaration of Divorce. Andrea leaned back in her chair and took a long sip of wine. She looked at me with a deer in the headlights expression that said she didn't believe this was happening. She looked at the top page for a moment and sighed. I said quietly, "My lawyer has prepared a very favorable decision for both of us." I paused for a few seconds. "It's pretty clear to me what your intentions are." I left it hanging to see what Andrea would say. She was silent. I continued, "The girls and I will stay in the house. I want them to be as unaffected by this as possible." I took a deep breath. I waited for Andrea to say something, would react somehow, but she was silent. We sat at her table for several minutes, and finally I had to push her a little. Say something, damn it. What's on your mind? Why are you doing this? I understand that you don't love me anymore, but at least your children. You should take care of them. I begged Andrea to say something. I needed to understand what I did to push her away. What have I done wrong as a husband? Nothing. Without looking at me, she said, I will not agree to a divorce. I still want you and my children. We're still family. It's just something I need for a while. It's separate from you and me. I laughed. Really? Do you think you can live here with your lovers and pretend we're still married? When was the last time you and I had sex? Andrea stammered and tried to tell the time. That was just a few weeks ago. I winced. No, it was not. This was months ago. Actually, it was 8 months ago. That's how little time you spend with your family. When was the last time you had sex with Tom? I was waiting for an answer. He was absent. I bet you were just getting started when I came here to your apartment. I bet you should have gotten dressed before you let me in. No answer. So don't give me your bullshit about loving me and wanting to keep our family a priority. Your actions speak louder than any words, and you have told me and the girls loud and clear that we are not your priority. I took a big sip of water. So have your lawyer look at the divorce agreement and contact my lawyer. His card is in the envelope. I got up to leave. I'm not going to tell your parents anything, so you can tell them whatever you want. Just don't make me a villain, or I'll tell them the truth. I went to the door. You have a week for your lawyer to contact mine, and then we will file documents with the court. I opened the door to leave. You can call your lover and tell him he can come back. I closed the door and went home to my daughters. Andrea, I don't know how John found out about the apartment and my secret bank account. I've been saving money since I returned to work after the birth of our third daughter. I put most of my commissions and bonuses into this account, and soon I had over $400,000 accumulated there. I first decided to buy an apartment as an investment, and then when I started meeting with Rob regularly on Thursdays, we started meeting there. There wasn't much furniture there, but over time I bought a few things to make the place cozy. When I started dating Tom, and he needed a place to live, I allowed him to move there. I thought it would only be for a few weeks until he found a place to live, but a few months have passed, and he's still here. John surprised me when he showed up here with that damn envelope of divorce papers. He shouldn't have known about this place. I had my lawyer look at the divorce agreement, and she was surprised that John wanted full custody of the girls. Typically in our state, the courts will award custody to the mother. She will try to change that and threaten John with a counteroffer that will practically bankrupt him once the house, mortgage, alimony, and child support are paid off. I didn't tell my lawyer about my apartment and other financial resources I had. I also understated my income by only showing her official tax returns. I know that if the firm has to produce its records, I will feel bad. The lawyers scheduled a first meeting to begin the process, and then the tough negotiations would begin. My ultimate goal was to have divorce completely abolished. I wanted to keep my husband and my daughters. I wanted my life to remain the same. My lawyer asked me when was the last time I saw my children. I hesitated trying to answer. She realized that I was trying to bluff, and then she said that perhaps I should be prepared to come to some kind of agreement with John. Week 100. John, I haven't seen or spoken to Andrea in weeks. The girls stopped asking about their mother. I decided it was time to start getting rid of things that belonged to Andrea and things that reminded me of her. I cleared out her closet, packing everything into boxes and making sure the photos of her were taken down. This included family photos we had in the hallway. I put our wedding album in one of the boxes with her clothes. The girls and I had a frank conversation about their mother one night over dinner. I tried to make it as painless as possible to tell them I didn't think she was coming back to us. They wanted to know if their mother still loved them. I told them that she loved them, but that mom had mental health issues that she needed to resolve in order to be a good mother again. I know I lied to them, but I needed to protect them from the truth. The truth would not do them any good. They're still kids, for God's sake. They were sad, and there were tears. Diana, in her wisdom, spoke to me privately and told me that she knew that her mother had left them and me and would probably not return. Dad, we are here to help you too. The three of us talked, and we know that Mom doesn't want to be with us. If she wanted, she would be here. But she hasn't been home for a long time, and that tells us that she doesn't want to be our mom anymore. We also know that you love your friend Jane. Will she be our new mother? To say that I was surprised by the maturity of my eldest daughter would be an understatement. She understood what was happening. Maybe not all the sordid details, but she understood the message her mother was sending. Would you be upset if I asked Jane to move in with us? Diana looked at me with a smile. Does she make you happy, Dad? I looked at my daughter, smarter than her age, and nodded. Then I think we know what you want to do. You just have to do it. She climbed off the chair at the kitchen island and headed to her room. Her younger sisters were waiting for her. Jane. The father of my child called and said that he was coming to see me. When he arrived, he was holding a bouquet of flowers and a pint of my favorite ice cream. This man knows the way to my heart. I took the flowers and put them in a vase, and then opened the ice cream and began to eat it. John looked at me with a smile. Would you like to share some of this ice cream? I smiled back. Take your spoon. He took a spoonful of the chocolate treat and then asked me a question. Have you thought about our baby and plans for the future when you are heavily pregnant and after the baby is born? We talked a little about the logistics of having a baby, and I told him that since it was my decision to get pregnant, it was my responsibility to take care of the baby. I am very independent and have resources that I can use when I need help. I make good money. Besides, John has his own children to take care of. I have a plan, yes. You remember that this child was my idea. I am the one who will take care of him or her. I know that, but as the father of your child, our child, I want to be part of this plan, if you allow it. Of course, I'll let you. You don't need an invitation. Good, because I have a plan too. Put on your coat and come with me. I looked at John with a very curious expression on his face, and he took the can of ice cream from me, put it in the freezer, put 2 spoons in the sink, and headed towards the door. Let's go. We got into his car and drove towards his house. I had been there before and met his daughters several times, but this time it felt different. So, you're all so mysterious. What's happening? You will find out everything in time. It was a mystery. We arrived at his house, and his 3 daughters were standing on the front porch. They were dressed nicely, and when we got out of the car, they greeted me and opened the front door. What the hell is going on here? We walked into the kitchen where there was food laid out for us. Cold cuts, bread, cheese, and some coleslaw. The ice bucket contained bottles of water and soda. The girls looked at me with such an intense gaze, as if they were part of something important. The girls offered food, and we made ourselves sandwiches, grabbed water, and sat at the kitchen island. I had a million questions, but I started with, "Girls, this is wonderful. For what reason?" Diana, as the eldest, was apparently appointed to speak for everyone. "We just wanted you to feel welcome. Daddy told us you're having a baby in a few months." "Well, thank you, and yes, the baby is due in about 6 months. I'll start showing soon." All 3 were now looking at my stomach. It was as if they could see the child and were trying to figure out if it was a boy or a girl. It was funny to watch them. John cleared his throat. "I asked you to come to our house because I have a question for you. One of those you don't have to answer today or right away." Now my curiosity has reached new heights. He continued, "The girls and I have been talking about this for a long time, and I would like, if you want, for you to move in with us. We want you to live here, with us." Oh my God, is he proposing? My mouth was open, and I needed a quick sip of water. Ah. Before I could answer, he continued, "Take your time to think about it. There's no rush. We have a few things to do before you move. A bit of remodeling and a few pieces of furniture that need to be removed and painted." John walked towards the master bedroom as he spoke. He opened the door and entered. I followed him. The room was completely empty. The door to the dressing room was open, and I saw that it was also empty. The bathroom was in similar condition. It wasn't hard to guess that Andrea was not only gone from their lives, but now from their home, their home. The divorce was in full swing. John walked around the empty room. I packed all her things about a month ago and sent them to her apartment. I donated my bedroom furniture to the Salvation Army. Where do you sleep? My face had a stunned expression and my tone was full of surprise. In the spare room. The bed is big enough for now. I have hired painters for this week and need help choosing new furniture for this room. Would you like to help me? Week 104, 2 years. John. Roy called me today and asked me to come to his office at my convenience. It's rare for a lawyer to do that, so I got in the car and drove there as quickly as possible. I didn't know if it was good news or bad, but any news would be welcome right now. I wanted the divorce from Andrea to be finalized as quickly as possible. The girls and I had made our emotional and mental separation a long time ago, and now all I needed was a court stamp on an official document. I had things to deal with. When I arrived at his office, I was immediately invited inside. His secretary handed me a bottle of water as I sat down. Roy had a huge smile on his face. Damn it, I was hoping this was good news. Well, John, I'm pleased to report that negotiations with Andrea's lawyer went well. She has accepted virtually all the conditions I have put forward, and I expect her to sign the agreement in the next 2 to 3 days. Damn it. Tell me the details, Roy. What about my girls? He cleared his throat to emphasize the importance of his words. She agreed that you would have full custody of the girls. It was as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I got what I wanted. The rest were little things. You will stay in the house and all its contents. You will keep the family bank accounts and your investment account. It is not big, but it is important. You will receive $100,000 from Andrea to create an education fund for girls. Andrea will waive any claims to your joint property. You won't have to give her anything. I'm sure I stopped listening when he said she agreed to my custody of the girls. I took a huge sip of water. Part of me was delighted by the news, and part of me was sad that my marriage had come to this. All because of her need for sex with other men. I realized that she didn't think I was the one she needed, but I knew that she would never be happy with one man. I knew this divorce was inevitable. I looked at Roy and thanked him. I knew the bill for his services would be hefty, but it would be worth it in the long run. When will it be official? When can I move on with my life? In 2 weeks. I have a judge who owes me a lot of favors, and she will expedite the process for us. Do we all need to be in court? No, the lawyers will take care of everything. Congratulations, John. You should be very happy with this outcome. Thanks, Roy. Was I happy with the outcome? I'm not sure there was. I mean, how can you be happy knowing that your life will take such a wrong path, that your wife, whom you thought was faithful, will turn out to be such a cunning woman and will hide her true feelings from you, all the while giving birth to 3 children for you? This is what surprised me. The second part was that by some miracle I landed on my feet, got custody of my 3 daughters, and started a new relationship that seemed to be heading in the right direction. Now I had a woman who was very pregnant, and every day I fell more and more in love with her and really wanted her in my life. I had a new beginning. I had a lot of work to be done. Andrea. My lawyer called and said that she had agreed with John's lawyer. She also said that I got off easy. Apparently, John's lawyer had all the information about my life and was ready to share it with the judge. My lawyer pretty much agreed to everything John wanted and said I was lucky to get away with those terms. She said the documents would be delivered by courier the next day and I needed to sign them and return them. I did so. Week 106. Andrea. The courier delivered an envelope from my lawyer containing a copy of the final decree of divorce. Now it was official. I was no longer married to John. Indeed, because I agreed that John would have full custody of our daughters, I was no longer a mother. A couple days ago, I drove by my old house, hoping to see my family, and there was a strange car parked next to John's car in the driveway. I slowed down, didn't see anyone, and continued on my way. It struck me that I had made a huge mistake. My inner need for sex controlled my mind so much that I ignored everything important in my life. I made my family secondary. I put my need for sex first in all my decisions. I'm so stupid. Now what the hell should I do? After. So what? A little over 3 years. Jane. My husband and I have a son, and we will soon have another child. Our daughters are thrilled to have a little brother. They take care of him constantly. They argue about who will push the stroller when we go for a walk. It's so cute to watch. My husband is wonderful. He is everything I ever wanted in a husband and more. I can't believe how lucky I am. We sold the house and moved to another one that better suited our needs, especially with 5 children. Remember what is important in your life and pay attention to it. I need to go to the toilet again. This baby is constantly putting pressure on my bladder. End. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.